Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the lesson about writing the equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. So before you can really get at this, you have to remember that parallel lines have equal slopes. And so if you're looking at a whole bunch of equations of lines, you can tell which are parallel because they have the exact same slope, such as this and this and this. They all have the same slope of 3, so they will all be parallel to each other. Well, another important thing about parallel and perpendicular lines is that on perpendicular lines, they have opposite reciprocal slopes. So a line of a slope of 5/8 and a line of a slope of -8/5 are going to be perpendicular to each other, just like a line with a slope of 7 and a line with a slope of -1/7. And so that's something we definitely need to remember as we continue on and write our equations for these things. And so what's going on is on your assignment, you're given equations of lines and a point that you need that line to go through. On the front side, you're supposed to write the equation of a line that's parallel to the given one. Well, if it's going to be parallel, it needs to have the same slope as the original one. And so if we look at this equation, it has a slope. The slope here is 3. That is the same slope that we're going to use on our new line. And to get this new line that you want to pass through this point, you're going to use this lovely formula up here. This is called point slope format or point slope form. And basically what it means is this y and this x are the y and x of our equation, just like if it's y equals mx plus b, it's the y value, and then the x value for any point on the line. The other y and then the other x, the y1 and x1, are the coordinates of the point you're trying to go through. So the x1 is going to be the 2 and the y1 is going to be the 7. And then there's this m. The m, in case you forgot, is slope, just like this slope here. So we're actually going to be using these values, the m value of 3, the x value of 2, and the y value of 7. We're going to write this out. We got y minus 7 equals 3, x minus 2. So all those values come from these numbers here. You may have noticed we didn't use the -4. You don't need the -4 to find the equation of the line that's parallel to it. You would need it to draw this line, but to draw our new line that goes through this point, it's not going to have the same y-intercept, so you're not going to use the original y-intercept. But you got this lovely equation here. We're not quite done because while this is the equation of the line that's parallel to the given one and it goes through the point, it's not simplified. It's not in a format that we're going to use. So let's go through and simplify it and turn it into y equals mx plus b format. What you need to do is do some distributing. And we got 3x minus 6 equals y minus 7. And then you're going to add 7 over here. And now we're looking at y is 3x plus 1. So this equation is parallel to this one, has the same slope, and it's going to go through this point. If you want to, you can check it. You're just going to take those two coordinates. You got 7 for y and then 2 for x, and plug it in, and if you see if it's true. Is 7 the same thing as 6 plus 1? Yeah, 7 is the same thing as 6 plus 1, which is 7. So this line is going to go through this point that we wanted to, and is parallel to the original. So let's have you go down to number 8, and we're going to rearrange this a little bit so we know what the original equation is. You may have noticed it doesn't say y equals everything else, but you can rearrange it so it does look like that. So go ahead and move the x over to the other side by adding 5x to both sides of our equation. And I got y is 5x plus 12, or 12 plus 5x. Look at the equation here and figure out what the slope is. If you said the slope is 5, good job. The slope is 5. Well, we want to use, this is our m value. This is our point here we're trying to go through. It's going to give us x1 and y1. So go ahead and put those values into the equation and simplify the equation. Pause the video to do that, and then check back. Alright, did you get y equals 5x plus 15? If you did, awesome. If you didn't, check through here and see if you did these same sort of steps. A common place that people might mess up is here you're supposed to do x minus x1, and x1 is negative. And so you're looking at x minus negative 2. If you have subtract negative, that's the same thing as add positive. So I simplified a little bit in there and then distributed. You've got to be careful with your signs, just like always. But yeah, you distribute your 5, and you get 5x plus 10, and you want to get y by itself, so you're going to add 5, and you end up with y equals 5x plus 15. So we're going to move on to the back side. On the back, you're doing the same thing. You're still trying to get a line that goes through this point, but this time you want it to be perpendicular. And so if you want a line to be perpendicular, you have to find the opposite reciprocal slope. So the original slope here is 1/2, and you have to turn that into the opposite reciprocal, which means you got to flip it upside down, so 2/1, and change the sign. That simplifies pretty nicely just to -2. So this is the slope we're going to use, but we're still going to use these values here. These are our x1 and our y1. And now we're going to write out our equation. So we got y minus the y1, which is 5. And then the slope we're using is -2 from here. And then we got x minus x1, which is this 2. And now we have our equation. Go ahead and simplify this just like you've been doing on the last few problems, and then check back in. All right, did you get y equals -2x plus 9? If you did, you should, pat yourself on the back and say how awesome you are, because you're really picking up on this. If you didn't get that, what you want to make sure is you don't forget about the negative here. As you distribute through, you end up with -2x and then plus 4, because negative times negative is positive. And then here you want to add 5 to get rid of this, subtract 5 there on the left side. So we're going to do one more. I want you to try and do the whole thing by yourself, and then check and see if you got it right. Once again, you want it to be perpendicular to this. All right, let's have you check your setup to make sure this is where you got things in the right spot. You got the right slope, x1, the correct x1 and y1. Your slope on the original one's 4, and you want the opposite reciprocal. The reciprocal 4 is 1/4. That's because 4 is 4/1. And then you change the sign on it to make it -1/4. That's what's going to go here in front. And then you got y minus 5 equals -1/4 of x minus -8. Remember, this is negative, and you're subtracting x1, so it's going to be minus negative. If you haven't finished the problem, go ahead and finish it. I just want to make sure you got the setup right. All right, let's have you check and see how you did. Did you get y equals -1/4 x plus 3? If you did, you should give yourself a little treat. If I had something for you that I could deliver digitally, I would. If you didn't get it, let's have you check and see how things went. Subtract -8 will give you +8 inside. When you distribute this -1/4, you have to remember it's negative, and you're times it by 1/4, which is the same thing as dividing by 4. This will give you -1/4 x, you just put it in front, and then -1/4 times 8 is the same thing as 8 divided by -4. That'll give you -2. And then here, for some reason, it's always 5 on the left. So we're going to be adding 5, and you end up with this. If you got this, good job. If you didn't, go ahead and practice some more and ask some questions online.